Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the April 15th Milledgeville Rotary meeting. Please remember to silence your cell phones as Frank Atkinson comes up as our Rotarian of the day.
All right. So the Lord prayer. Lord, thank you for our many blessings. Thank you for allowing us to be here together today. We thank you for this club. We thank you for our guest speaker today. And we pray for our nation. We ask for these things in your holy name. Amen. And the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, four-way pledge. Four-way test, excuse me. It was a pledge at one time. Of the things we think, say, or do. First,
Is it true?
second,
Is it fair to all concerned?
third,
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
fourth,
Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
and fifth.
Is it fun?
Thank you, Frank. As you sit down, please don't forget the blue buckets for Alzheimer's research. And last week we had a whopping $10, so we get a couple matches for $10. Okay. Tom. Is there another match? Okay, I'll do it here. Thank you, Tom. Visitors. Jimmy, you want to introduce your visitors?
I have our speakers, parents, with me, good friend of mine. What's your name? Willie. Good friend. Willie Conwood.
And today I have with me, I also have a speaker's husband, and I'll introduce her in a bit. And then I have Lauren Smith, who works with me at our company.
Any prayer requests? Okay, moving right along. There's some handouts on your table about the fishing activity at Lockerly. Every year, Jennifer gets a bunch of fish for free, so she can, and in return, she has to hold the fishing event. So go up and take some of her catfish away. There's slips of paper on the table for Carolyn Reeves is being proposed by Jim for membership. Any other announcements? Okay, so if there aren't any announcements, Aaron, you want to introduce our speaker while I get the PowerPoint up?
And I just realized I forgot to actually introduce my guest. My guest is Pam Stewart, but the speaker today is his wife, Pam Stewart, and she formed a nonprofit organization, Pam Steward Cancer Foundation. So she's going to tell us all about that.
How many of you are cancer survivors? Raise your hand. Cancer survivor. Nobody? No one in here has had cancer before. Wow. How many? Then I can't ask you because I was going to ask how many of those are brain cancer survivors? Only one of us. How many of you are familiar with glioblastoma? Great. Monday, November the 6th of 2017, I had worked at the hospital in Sandersville all day. I left Sandersville at 4:30 that afternoon, drove to Augusta, caught a flight from Augusta to Atlanta, and from Atlanta to New Orleans. My last flight of the day. By the time I settled into my hotel room, it was way past midnight Central Time. Had to be up by 5:30 the next morning to call 2 employees at the hospital in Sandersville to instruct them to meet with Human Resources prior to leaving at 7 a.m. Finished my phone call, got dressed, went to the hospital where I was scheduled to work the rest of the week. Long story short, the survey was canceled. We were directed to remain in New Orleans and we would all be reassigned by mid-afternoon. So we decided to go have brunch at Brennan's in New Orleans. So as I'm driving from the hospital to downtown New Orleans, I noticed I've got a headache. Well, you know what? I hadn't eaten since lunch the day before. I had not slept much that night. And stress. 3 key ingredients for a headache. Absolutely. So I just discounted it. Oh well. As I'm sitting there at Brennan's eating, I became extremely nauseated. But I managed to eat a little. As by the time we finished, we had received a phone call telling us that we're going to keep the team intact. They were sending us 2 hours west of New Orleans. Several of my colleagues decided they were going to spend the afternoon sightseeing in New Orleans and asked me if I would like to join them. And I said, no, number one, I've got to drive on. I've got to prepare a new agenda. You're ready for this new survey. So I'm going to go ahead and leave. Secondly, I didn't feel good. As I'm driving the 2-hour drive, I got extremely nauseated to the point I pulled off the interstate twice. I called Trey, told him what was going on. He said, go to the emergency room. I said, I am not going to the emergency room for a headache. Number one. Number two, I'm definitely not going to a hospital that I'm about to survey tomorrow. Are you kidding? I will stop, get some Advil PM, take that tonight, sleep it off, and I'll be fine. Woke up the next morning, felt a little better. I worked the rest of the week, flew home Friday night. Saturday, I didn't feel great, but not too bad. Sunday was a completely different story. Sunday afternoon, I did not move. I did not get out of bed. I had the worst headache I've ever had in my life. As our oldest daughter was preparing to go back to Athens, she voiced her concerns to Trey and said, this is not normal. Even with the headache, Mom never stays in bed. Something's wrong. He said, yeah, I'm concerned too. So he came to me and he said, let's go to the emergency room. I am not going to the emergency room for a headache. Came the second time, he got the same response. The third time, he said, you have no choice. We are going to an emergency room. The only choice you have, Pam, is where are we going? Are we going to Sandersville or are we going to Augusta? I said, Trey, I don't want to pay a $350 copay for a headache. If my head still hurts tomorrow, I'll go to the doctor and we'll deal with it then. He said, no, it's worth $350 at this point to get some relief, is it not? And yeah, I was willing to pay $350 because I had a terrible headache. So as we get in the car, he said, where do you want to go? You want to go here to Sandersville or do you want to go to Augusta? I'm not going to Augusta for a headache. All they're going to do is give me some pain medication and send me home. And he said, well, Pam, all right, let's just go here. Thankfully, I went to Sandersville. I did not know the physician who was working that night, but I did know the nurses. The doctor came in, usual questions. He said, I'm going to give you some Benadryl and Compazine. That should help it. Do some lab work. Let's just see. He was only gone for a few minutes. He came back in and he said, your colleagues tell me this is not you. Something's not right. I'm going to go ahead and do a CT scan. Had I gone anywhere else, number one, I would not have had a CT scan that quickly. Probably would not have had a CT scan that night. But he did a CT scan. Trey could hear him out in the nurse's area on the phone just saying, okay, okay, okay. And he thought, that doesn't sound good. He came in and told us, you've got a brain mass. Size of a line. And there is so much swelling, it has shifted your brain 11 millimeters to the left, which explains why I was telling Trey my head hurts here. He said, Miss Stewart, I'm extremely concerned you're going to lose your airway. What do you want me to do? And what do you want me to tell the medics to do? I was a little bit out of it from the medication, but I remember sitting up and looking at him and I said, you better not let me die. He said, yes, ma'am, I got it. He said, I'm not comfortable putting you in the back of an ambulance. I've already spoken with a neurosurgery resident and Augusta is going to be waiting when you arrive. I don't have an ambulance in the county available. I've got to keep one here and I've got one en route to Augusta already. Helicopter's going to be here in 20 minutes to pick you up. Wow. I've got a brain tumor, being flown to Augusta, possibly going to lose my airway. It was a lot to digest in a very short period of time. Arrived in Augusta, admitted to neuro ICU. Monday morning, the neurosurgeon came in and he said, I really want to reduce as much of the swelling as possible before we do anything. We're going to have a number of scans. I had more CTs, more MRIs, and you can count. I lost count. It's unbelievable. He came in later that afternoon and he said, we're going to continue with IV steroids to try to reduce as much swelling as possible. And I scheduled you for surgery on Thursday afternoon. This is a primary brain tumor. We don't see cancer anywhere else. Wednesday afternoon, he said, we're going to do a different MRI. I've got somebody that's coming into Augusta who can do this MRI spectroscopy. Okay, I'm fine with that. He comes in Wednesday night and tells me this looks metastatic. I said, what do you mean? I've had scans, my whole body's been scanned and there's no cancer anywhere. He said, I know. I can't explain it. But I'll know more tomorrow when we get into surgery. And I've got pathology there and they can do a frozen section. I said, okay, Dr. Bender, that's fine. Wednesday night, tell me what you do at night when you go home. He explained his routine. I said, we're talking about brain surgery. And we're talking about my brain. You better go home, go to bed, don't drink anything, and you better be on your A game tomorrow morning when you come in.
That's the truth.
He said, yes, ma'am. I said, I know everything there is to know about you. And it looked like kind of funny. I said, I had to ask everybody I know from A to Z. And he said, you have spoken. When I said, may I ask who? I said, certainly. I told him. He said, yeah, you have spoken to just about everybody. I said, so go home, go to sleep, and be on your A game tomorrow morning. So he did. I had a craniotomy Thursday afternoon. As he removed the brain flap, created a window to access the tumor, cut through the cranial meninges, the tumor rolls out. Remember that, tumor rolls out. Within 48 hours, I'm discharged and I'm at home. November 22nd, Wednesday night before Thanksgiving, 9 p.m., I get a phone call from the neurosurgeon. Pathology results. He said, it's a grade 4 tumor, malignant. It's cancer. It's glioblastoma multiforme, GBM. It's the worst possible diagnosis I could have received. GBM is one of the most complex, deadliest, treatment-resistant cancers there is. It is the worst possible cancer anyone could have. Very poor prognosis. 1-year survival rate, 25%. 5-year survival rate, 5%. Very high rate of recurrence occurring in about 90% of the patients. 3 years, 5 months this week. I said, okay, Dr. Vander, what next? He said, Pam, standard of care. I said, okay, which is radiation and chemotherapy. I said, and then what? He said, that's it. That's it. Oh, no. No, sir, that is not it. There's got to be more. He said, there are no clinical trials. There is nothing else in Augusta. I said, well, there may not be in Augusta, but there is somewhere. I got on the phone calling medical friends of mine. Trey was on the phone. Unanimously, everyone we spoke with said, you need to be at Duke. I emailed the neurosurgeon. I said, I want to go to Duke. He said, well, I need the name of the provider. I don't know anybody at Duke. Surely you do. You network. That's okay. I'll find the name of a provider. So I got online. I started looking, and I stumbled across a way to refer myself. So I did. I filled it out, I sent it in. Within 48 hours, I received a phone call from Duke. And they said, you look like a very good candidate for our program. We need your entire medical record and every scan you've ever had. Overnight it to us. I did. Sent it to them. Sunday night, 8:45, received the strangest phone call I've ever had in my life. I answered the phone and somebody said, Friedman. I said, excuse me? He said, this is Dr. Friedman. Is this Ms. Stewart? I said, it is. He said, do you want to come to Duke? Yes, sir, I do. Great, I'll have somebody be in touch. I hung up. Within 24 hours, I got a phone call from Duke. Trey and I were sitting in Duke, December 14th, 2017. At that point in time, they were not discussing any clinical trials. They proceeded to say, let's do a few other studies on your tumor. We want the specimens from Augusta. So they did that. She said, just wait, and we'll be in touch. January the 2nd of 2018, Trey and I had already decided I gotta get started on treatment. I have no time to spare, so we're driving to Augusta to begin radiation, which was guided and directed by Duke. They had already set up a plan. She said, great. The neuro-oncologist called me when we were around. She said, great, you need to go ahead and get started. I'll be in touch with the radiation oncologist in Augusta. So Augusta managed my care locally, so I didn't have to stay in Durham, but Duke oversaw and guided the treatment plan. So I did radiation for 30 days, driving back and forth to Augusta. I did oral chemotherapy, a very low dose, for those 30 days. I finished that February of 18. March of 18, I began a very high dose of oral chemotherapy. I would take it for 5 days, all for 23. I did that for a year. I finished in March of 19. All the time driving back and forth to Duke every 8 weeks for MRIs. In February of 2020, still doing well. We had decided to push it out. She said, we can push it to 10 weeks or 12 weeks for your scan. Very apprehensive. Didn't want to do that because this grows rapidly. Very, very quickly. Glioblastoma is notoriously known for its finger-like projections and tentacles that invade the brain, making it nearly impossible to remove in surgery. What did I tell you? My tumor rolled out. There were no visible finger-like projections or tentacles that had invaded my brain. I was told there could have been microscopic finger-like projections that were not able to be seen under a microscope or visible to the naked eye. I knew what I was up against. As I'm doing my research, glioblastoma was first noted in the medical literature in the 1920s. In the past 30 years, there have only been 4 drugs and 1 device. I was like, are you serious? 4 drugs and 1 device in 30 years? Look at medical technology. Look at our world today. Look at all the new drugs on the market. Look at all the new drugs for other cancers. And there's nothing for glioblastoma? 4 drugs and 1 device in 30 years? You've got to be kidding me. I'm sorry, it's unacceptable. So I looked at Trey and I'm like, okay, now what? What do we do? We've got to increase awareness. We've got to get behind this. We've got to have a movement for brain cancer research. And research is going on in other areas, but primarily at Duke. And like they said, none of these treatments have succeeded significantly in extending patient lives, other than just a few months. Glioblastoma is equivalent to receiving a death sentence. It's often referred to as the Terminator. So as Trey and I are going back and forth to Duke, we decide, let's do a fundraiser. We hosted the first Terminator. We named it after glioblastoma, the Terminator. We hosted a 5K 1-mile walk. in April of 2019. My personal goal was to raise $5,000. Friends and family told me, don't get your hopes up. That's a lot of money. You will not raise that much money, not for your first event. Ladies and gentlemen, we raised over $10,000. 2 weeks following that event, Trey and I went to Duke's annual fundraising event called Angels Among Us, and we donated $10,540 to brain cancer research. Those funds are critical. They're unrestricted funds that they can use as they see fit for brain cancer research. I had the pleasure of meeting some of those researchers, and I want you to put a face to that research. I'm that lab. And every time you're in that lab, I want you to think about me, see my face. What you're doing impacts people. Please, we need a cure. We were unable to host the event last spring due to COVID. We were not able to have it this spring as we had planned due to COVID. So Trey and I looked at each other and I'm like, okay, what next? What next? So we decided to form a foundation, a 501c3. We were hearing from a lot of people, we would love to donate, but we want a tax deduction. Okay, that's what we did. You see these famous people who've been diagnosed? Prominent people. John McCain, Ted Kennedy, Bo Biden, Tug McGraw. But there's also my famous friends who've been diagnosed. Bev Adams, diagnosed about the same time I was. She's no longer here. Faye Aman survived 2 years, almost 3. Rachel Jane Frederick survived almost 3 years. She died February 1st, 2018 at 25 years old. Stacey Ramey, going through standard of care right now. Lauren Gatchell just completed standard of care. It is estimated 84,000 people will be diagnosed this year with brain cancer. The National Brain Tumor Association says that 18,000 people will die this year because of brain cancer. I'm sorry, it's unacceptable. There needs to be more. 30 years, 4 drugs, 1 device. So we formed, as I stated, the Pam Steward Cancer Foundation. It's 501c3. As Erin and I were discussing the logo and building the website for this, she asked me, she said, "What do you want the logo to look like?" I have no idea. And as everybody looks at this, everybody asks me, "Why do you have a starfish? What is that about?" And it has nothing to do with brain cancer. But I was reminded, I love to go to the beach. I love to sit and just look out at the ocean. And as I was doing that and thinking about this logo, it reminded me of a story I heard many years ago. This elderly man who lived near the coast would get up early every morning before the break of dawn and walk on the beach. And one morning while he was out walking, he noticed off in the distance this child that was walking along and occasionally would stoop down, pick something up, toss it in the ocean, walk a little bit, stoop down, pick something up, toss it into the ocean. And he's wondering, what in the world is he doing? So as the man approaches the child, he said, "May I ask what you're doing?" And the little boy said, "Yes. I'm throwing the starfish back in the ocean. The tide's going out, the sun's coming up, and if they don't make it back into the ocean, they're going to die." And the gentleman looked at him and said, "Son, there must be hundreds of thousands of starfish on the beach this morning. There's no way you'll make a difference." The little boy stepped away, he picked up the starfish, threw it back into the ocean, and he looked at the gentleman and he said, "I made a difference for that one." That's it. That's my purpose. That is the mission of this foundation. If I am able to make a difference in the life of just one person, whether that's through brain cancer research or financially helping someone, I've accomplished my goal, and I have accomplished the mission of this foundation. Brain cancer research costs a lot for treatment, more than any of the other cancers. And it is a lifelong treatment. It never ends. I will be going to Duke and having scans for as long as I live. It is emotionally draining. It's physically hard. And it creates financial hardships for patients and their families. Patients are often impacted by brain cancer in the way that they are not able to drive any longer. They're no longer able to work. And they're having to get treated for this. It's a financial hardship. I'm not lucky. I have been blessed. And I was blessed by the fact no one would have ever known or ever suspected brain cancer. I had no other deficits. I didn't have issues with my gait, with my speech. I had not had any seizures. Most people who have a brain tumor, especially the size of mine and with all of the edema that was there, the swelling, they have seizures. I had not lost my peripheral vision. I did not have major issues with my memory. I only had a headache. Who would have thought a headache would have resulted in a glioblastoma? I hope that each and every one of you will join me in increasing awareness for brain cancer and helping us with this foundation. Who knows? That one person could be you or your loved one. Thank you very much for your time.
Again, thank you very much. Are there any closing announcements? And thank you for coming again, Lauren, and Pam, you and your family. And with that, we're ending. It's hard for me to do it every time.